Welcome back into the show. John Brogden is Financial Services Council. He's CEO there. He joins us on our panel today. Jeffrey Garrett from the Australian School of Business at the University of New South Wales, the Dean no less. Let's bring into this discussion now Peter Switzer from Switzer Financial Services. Peter, let's talk about red tape. Let's talk about cash flow for business. And let's talk about PAYG that goes from quarterly to monthly. Hello, is that business friendly or is that not?
No, it's not. And this is the whole point of the exercise. Those little issues that you brought up, Carson, are really side issues. The bottom line is, when I listened to the Treasurer's speech, it took me back to that movie When Harry Met Sally, and I said to myself, I want to be on what he's on. He is actually completely off with the fairies, using 10-year projections to make really good ideas. Like, we all agree Gonski and the NDIS are really good ideas. But he reminds me of a father who wants to send his kid to Harvard and won't do the second job and hasn't got the savings.
But on the other hand, Peter, you want our politicians to have vision. And now you're crucifying him for having some vision.
Of course, but Carson, where was the vision 2 or 3 years ago? Here is a government whose popularity is so low that he's coming up with great ideas, so he'll at least be remembered for actually having some great ideas. Look, I believe that for once in their life, Treasury's forecasts are actually believable. But, you're talking about, Abbott being wedged by all these promises that Labor's put in place that he's going to find very difficult to say no to. Well, I say basically he can sign up for these, but he also, I think, will produce much better growth than Labor will, because if you look at this budget, and this is the way I assess this budget, what has it done for businesses? This is where your question started from. Absolutely zero for business. The Treasurer, the ex-Queensland Treasurer, Keith DeLacy, has made the point that Labor has done everything to offend both foreign businesses and local businesses. And I look at this budget and there's absolutely nothing there to inspire greater investment by business. The best thing that will happen to this economy will be September 14, there'll be a new election, there'll be a new government, and there will be business confidence rising, investment will grow, and the economy will be stronger. And that will make it easier for Hockey and Abbott to actually honour the promises of, respecting what's in Gonski and what's actually in the NDIS. So I just don't think, everything, this is a budget for, I call this a sayonara budget, because this is what these guys deserve.
All right. That's pretty black and white. Jennifer Westacott is from the Business Council. She joins us from the nation's capital. Jennifer, call that a tirade, call that a reality check. How do you see it stacking up? Is this just a fait accompli, sayonara and all that?
Look, I don't know about the sayonara bit, but it's not good for business. I mean, we were hoping that this budget would press the reset button, that we get a bit of business confidence going again, but we just haven't got the measures in there, Carson, that go to that. I mean, let's go through it. We've basically got the government failing to deliver on its own fiscal strategy. That means all the hard work in this budget is to come. We've got 7 years of consecutive deficits at a time when we were growing our economy with great terms of trade. That's $48 billion that we're going to have in deficits over the next 3 years. We've missed the opportunity to do the hard structural work. There's nothing in this for business. And really it's a case of muddling through. I mean, fundamentally for us, the government is asking us to believe that a budget approach that hasn't worked in the past is somehow going to work in the future, and we've got real doubts about the capacity to get back to surplus in the time frame the government's outlined.
Look, I put it as you might well have heard to Chris Richardson before. You've just said there was nothing in it for business. What about infrastructure? Aren't you being a little disingenuous here? There was some cold hard cash commitments and targeted spending there. You're saying that's all irrelevant?
Well, but if you think about, the totality of the infrastructure requirements in Australia, is it actually going to close the gap? I mean, people talk about a $700 billion infrastructure deficit, and this is really a drop in the ocean. Of course, it's welcome, and if the government has got some innovative ways of encouraging private sector investment, let's sit down, let's look at the detail. But
you would presumably be welcoming the fact that there are not the across-the-board corporate tax increases. They could have gone for the jugular there. They've held back. Jennifer, give them credit there.
Well, you can't thank people for something that they shouldn't have done.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't say, gee, we're lucky we didn't get run over by a train today. You know, we're feeling really happy. I mean, you know, we've missed another opportunity to do comprehensive tax reform.
They've aligned the precedent. They've aligned the apprenticeship system more closely to industry needs.
That's a good idea. That was something that we've been suggesting to them. But you know, we're talking $70 million there. But that's a good thing. And look, it's not to say there aren't good things in the budget, but it's a muddling through budget. It's failed to really get the spending side under control. I mean, people talk about a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, no,
and we should have got that under control.
Jennifer, I think you're right about that, but let me try to put two specifics on it. The first specific, Carson, is that Kevin Rudd and Wayne Swan spent as much money in proportionate terms as China and the US did in responding to the global financial crisis. Right. Now, Australia was never going to be hit as hard as those countries because we had a better regulated and in some senses more protected financial sector. Massive spend, big overhang. Now you have the washback, which is that the Australian economy is slowing down at a time when you need to be bringing the budget you'd like back into balance, and you can't do that because revenues are now going down because the economy is slowing down. So I think we've always got to remember those reverberations, and we'll be asking the question for a long time, I think. Did Labor overspend in response to the financial crisis, or was that a quote-unquote an insurance policy that allowed us to escape a recession? We don't know, but I think we're still seeing the waves washing through the system, and it does look like too much spending in the system as a result.
All right, Peter Switzer, to you on that one. We know that there was some mindless programs up and down the nation. What are you hearing from the coalface? There you are sitting in Brisbane. What is business crying out for as an alternative?
Well, look, I think one thing we have ignored in this whole equation is that not only has the government had trouble with its forecast, I think the Reserve Bank has actually been too cautious and has kept interest rates too high. They've actually woken up probably 6 months, maybe 9 months too late. I think they were supported by a whole bunch of the country's economists who also got it wrong. And so that is actually, in talking about Jeffrey's slowing of the economy, I think the Reserve Bank has been an accessory before the fact, and so that hasn't helped the government. But the reality is, I think that Jennifer has talked about business not being given the incentives to actually respond to this budget, and I think you're right. The infrastructure is a great spend, but once again, it's something out there. It's nothing that's going to actually immediately encourage business to want to get out there and invest.
On your point on rates, so just on it, I know you've panned the economists collectively, but when it comes to fiscal monetary push and pull, if the government has been overspending, as we've acknowledged, surely the RBA had to sit pat. Surely it couldn't cut as aggressively as Ben Bernanke, as Mario Draghi.
Wait a second, that's not correct, because Ben Bernanke was cutting at the same time as Barack Obama was running up trillion-dollar deficits per annum.
And where's it got America when it comes to growth? It's been static.
No, US growth looks pretty good, actually.
For all those trillions thrown at it, we can only squeeze out.
That's correct.
How much?
But I mean, look, I think the big story, I think Peter's right, that the big story is going to be interest rates and central banks. And I think what we're looking at is RBA cuts and likely slow tightening of monetary policy in the US. What does that tell me? That tells me global slowdown, but a lower Australian dollar. So that'd be, is that better or worse for Australia? But we look, at some level, the government looks like a little cork that's being popped around on a pretty big global storm.
Doesn't all of this yet again just say that this wasn't the time for small changes? I mean, this is a budget that is full of small changes. Right. Full of small changes.
Small target budget all over the place.
And small changes, there's no theme to this. That nobody goes home thinking, this is an infrastructure budget, or nobody goes home thinking this is a pro-business budget. There's no theme for economic growth. There's theme for spending growth, there's no doubt about that, in social policy. But as Jennifer Westacott, I think, rightly said, it's not simply a bad budget for business. There's no, I think, reset button. And that's right, there's no big message to business that, look, things are a little uncertain. We're not in the toilet, but where is the hope? Where is the direction for the future? This offers nothing in that sense, nothing at all.
Yeah. And also, Carson, we even saw today, Jeff Combay was out there, Greg Combay was out there actually just bagging business all the way into the budget. It's like, what's going on?
Yep.
You know, part of the problem for this economy is that business confidence has been in the toilet for a long time, and these guys don't seem to understand that there is a link between business confidence, business investment, and a strong economy.
Peter, I've got to get the wrap up on this segment, but I'm intrigued by your opening remark, which was it was a sideshow to flag that more SMEs are going to be having to pay more frequent and earlier tax payments. That didn't seem to touch a nerve for you and your members.
Oh, look, as I say, anything that actually doesn't make small business feel confident to get out there and invest and hire is crazy economics, particularly in a budgetary setting, Carson. I think you're absolutely right.
All right. We're going to take a very short break. We've got Peter with us after that. We've got John Brogden. We've got, of course, Jeffrey Garrett in Canberra. We're going to be joined next, of course, by James Dagger-Nixon and Jennifer Westercott.